Okay, let's talk a little bit more about interval notation. So there are some things that get a little confusing about this. So what we use interval notation for is to describe intervals on the x-axis. And you could do the y-axis too, but we use it to describe these intervals. So if you solve a problem and it's an inequality problem or something like x greater than 5, then you could draw that on the axis down here. It means, oh, I go to 5. 5 is not included, and I can shade the axis, right? And this is where we first talk about interval notation, and then how we decide whether to use a parentheses versus a bracket is one of the first questions that comes up. So parentheses and bracket. A parentheses is for the point not included, so that's the same time as you'd have an open dot. So not included. Right. A bracket is when the point is included, and that goes with a closed dot, and that is that point is included as part of the answer. Right. And then a couple of rules about this notation. It always goes left to right. So let's look at some examples of what that might look like. Let me see if I can clear this drawing. Yeah, let's just erase all this. So the notation always goes left to right. So whether you come up with the problem that way, or maybe you're doing domain and range, right? Let's look at something like 5 over x minus 2. Well, the domain of that, everything but 2 works, right? So as long as x is not 2, this will work fine. I just can't divide by 0. So on a graph, that means 2 I can't do. Everything else I can, right? So how do I write that in interval notation? Well, I go left to right. I start at the left of the graph, so over here, and that would go all the way down to negative infinity. Oh, I can't draw. Negative infinity. It goes all the way up to 2, does not include 2. And then it starts again at 2, doesn't include 2, but very, very close, and then goes forever up to infinity. So these always go from left to right inside of each one of these intervals. So it goes from smaller number to bigger number, smaller number to bigger number. And if you have multiple little pieces of intervals tied together, you use the union symbol to do that. Okay, let's do one more. Let's talk about the domain of something like the square root of x minus 5. Okay, so for square roots, we can only take square roots of positive numbers and get a graph. There are imaginary numbers, but we're not talking about those right now. For domain, we're talking about only being able to take square roots of positive numbers and 0. So if I want to find the domain of this, I'm looking for when this is greater than or equal to 0. Well, clearly, if x equals 5, I would get 0, and then bigger numbers are going to work, right? Like 6, 7, 8, 9, I would get positives. So on a graph, this includes 5 because it gives me 0 and works, and then goes out to infinity. So this is going to look like bracket around the 5 because it's part of the answer, out to infinity, like that. And you always end up with parentheses on infinity.